Fred and Ted, because Ted's recording from the back.
Okay.
I was just giving him a thumbs up, but I think he missed it.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Ted, good?
I didn't see.
We've got the agenda. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 25th, 2021 Dudley Candidates Night, where we will be engaging with our candidates on the ballot this upcoming election, learning a little bit about them and the roles and responsibilities that they hope to fulfill in service to the town of Dudley. Prior to beginning this evening, please stand to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So prior to jumping in this evening and welcoming the candidates up to stage, I'd like to just go ahead and give you a preliminary ballot review. The ballots are posted, sampled specimen ballots around the building. They are available for viewing. But just to orient you to our races this year, for Board of Selectmen, there are 2 seats being challenged by 4 candidates: John Marcy, Stephen Sullivan, Anna Chinaki-Durgan, and David Durgan. Treasurer-collector is a contested race: Richard Carmignani and Kelly Laskowski. Assessor, Joanne Simzak. Dudley Charlton Regional School District School Committee, 1 seat being challenged by Kathleen Carmignani and Caitlin Panzik. Board of Health has 1 seat being challenged for Jennifer Canoyer and Anna Chinaki-Durgan. Water Sewer Commissioner, 2 seats, Jay Spall, Scott Zukowski. Planning Board, a 3-year term being contested by Thomas Chinaki individually, and a 1-year unexpired term by Guy Horn Jr. The Library Trustees, there are 2 seats, Joyce Nedorazinski and Nicole Kucherov. And finally, the Dudley Housing Authority, there is 1 seat being contested, and it is being run for by David Durgan and Leslie Sullivan. We will not be hearing from all of the candidates this evening, but we will be hearing from several of the contested races tonight based on those who RSVP'd to be here. Format and rules for this evening. If you don't know my name is Chris Starcheski. I am the moderator for the town of Dudley. Sorry I didn't introduce myself at the beginning for those of you out in the community. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an introduction to the audience. They will then engage in a 2-minute response to prepared questions. They will then have the opportunity to address questions from the audience. I will give you instructions on how that will work as our first go-around, and that rule will apply throughout the evening for that opportunity. And then each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for closing remarks in each section. The order of addressing candidates was selected by me previously. It's going to be a rolling, alternating. Whoever goes first will go second for the second speaking round as we roll. Due to the format, this event may run for a couple of hours. So if you are in the audience and exiting, please do so quietly. Try to use the doors at the back as best we can. And certainly, please maintain silence during the presentation. Negative or derogatory comments to the candidates by any of the participants will not be tolerated and will be immediately addressed by me, as well as from the audience. Please provide appropriate decorum for the atmosphere and the environment out of respect for the candidates and the offices that they're running for. If there is any heckling or catcalling, things like that of that nature from the crowd, I may ask for you to be removed from this space. During the public question forum, all the questions will be posed to each of the candidates. So for example, if you have a question, what is your favorite color? I will repeat that question to each of the candidates and give them the appropriate amount of time for their response. If a question is a repeat or is very close to a topic that was addressed in either the prepared questions or any previous public questions, I will probably disallow that just in the interest of time. So please think about the questions that you are asking as we come through. I will go over the general topics that all of the candidates will be addressing. So if you want to get the wheels turning for questions now, that will give you a little bit of an opportunity. The Board of Health will be our first candidates to come up, and I'm just going to go through the topics before I introduce the candidates and welcome them up. We will be able to hear from the candidates on their goals, actions during the pandemic, role of a board member, and interdepartmental cooperation. The school committee topics, expectations, relationships, challenges, decision-making, experience and strengths, as well as areas of improvement. For the treasurer-collector, we'll hear about goals, their role as the treasurer-collector, or soon-to-be treasurer-collector, challenges and initiatives, customer service. The Board of Selectmen will be reviewing candidate goals, the areas of economic development, public safety, public health, education, experience, cost of living, infrastructure, and the biggest challenge. If time allows this evening, we will hear from the Planning Board and the Housing Authority candidates. As of right now, we're looking at Board of Health, School Committee, Treasurer-Collector, and Board of Selectmen. So we will go into those two others, Planning Board and Housing Authority, if time permits. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our candidates, Jennifer Knoyer and Annika Chinaki-Durgan, for the Board of Health up to the front. How are you, Mrs. Knoyer?
Very well, thank you.
Marvelous.
Good evening.
Hello. So if Ms. Chinaki-Durgan does come in, we'll have her pick up at the point that we're at, just in the interest of time and audience participation. So just so you know, I'm going to try and, of course, my password is on. Hang on just a moment, sorry.
That's okay.
Out of fairness to all the candidates, I think you might be able to see that.
I can.
I just have a timer that's running to provide some equity in the experience. Sorry I don't have it two ways, but you trust me, it's 3 minutes right now. So Jennifer, you've got 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the public. Use that time any way you wish, and if you're finished, you can just say, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Jennifer Knoyer. I have served on the Board of Health for the past 12 years. I'm a lifelong resident of Dudley. I'm married. My husband, Don, works at MAPFRE Insurance. We have one son. His name is Zach. He recently graduated from Nichols College. Prior to getting involved with the town, I was involved with Cub Scouts. I started in Cub Scouts as a den leader and then became Cub Master, was Cub Master in the troop, in the pack 274 in Dudley for 10 years, and then moved on into the Boy Scouts. I was on the committee and I was yard sale chair for 2 years. The reason why I became involved in politics in the town and giving back is my father, Roger Dubois, was involved in the town for many years. He was employed by the town and he served on the board. So I kind of grew up with it and thought that this is what you do. When you live in a town, you give back. The reason why I chose the Board of Health was when I graduated college, I was a certified medical assistant, worked in the healthcare field for 10 years. So I had that background, so I thought that would be a benefit being on the Board of Health. I also worked in restaurants and I am ServSafe certified currently still. So I do know how the inspection services and what needs to be done in restaurants. During my time on the Board of Health, I have taken classes on septic design and septic inspection. I've taken courses on housing and some additional food training, and we train twice a year. with the Worcester Public Health doing setups and everything, doing drills just like we did during the pandemic. So I thought it was a good board to get involved in. I've enjoyed serving on it for the past 12 years. We've done a lot of good things for the town, and that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that introduction, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Relative to your goals, what are the 3 primary goals that you wish to accomplish during your term as member of the Dudley Board of Health, and how do you intend to accomplish them? You'll have 2 minutes for that response.
I'll wait for you.
Yeah.
Okay. My primary goal is I would like to do more vaccination clinics. Dudley finally has a public health nurse that is dedicated to the town of Dudley only, not multi-regional. And we can provide more flu clinics. We did a COVID clinic through the Senior Housing Authority, and it went very well. And that's something that I feel at the town we need to provide more of to help our seniors and our children and be available to give more vaccines. We are working on the setup. We have the refrigerator and the things that we need, so it's something that I think we should work towards going forward. One of my other goals would be Earth Day. Over the course that I've been doing it, has progressively gotten bigger, and I'd like to continue to make it a more town-wide involved event. This past Earth Day was the best Earth Day that we've had. It was very well attended. It was a good time, and we're trying to make it a little more interactive, and that's another goal going forward. The third thing that I would like to do is the permitting process for people who are applying for food permits and septic permits and well permits. We've heard from some, it is difficult. There is a lot of paperwork, so we're hoping to streamline that, maybe be able to get some online permitting and make it a little bit easier for people to access everything. So those are my 3 goals that I hope to go forward, and I know that Earth Day, we're already starting to think about next year. We're already starting to plan. We have some good ideas in mind, and I know the town is working on e-permitting, so I've been involved in watching how that will go, and that will help and benefit everyone.
Marvelous. Thank you very much. As you consider the actions during the pandemic, over the course of the pandemic, how specifically has the Board of Health adapted to public health orders and directives? And how would you rate the Board of Health's response since March of last year? Feel free to go into a little detail.
Okay. So overall, I think the Board of Health did a very good job with what we were able to do. As soon as the pandemic started and things were shut down, when things started to reopen, we went out, I as chairman went out, our public health nurse went out, our health agent, and met with businesses and explained to them how they could reopen, what needed to be done. We tried to educate the public as much as possible too by getting information out there, on the website, having information regarding COVID. When it was time that we could sign people up, when the vaccine finally became available and we could sign people up, we put it out there on the website. We sent information out. We helped and assisted people signing up to get the vaccination. It was difficult in the beginning because there were only limited spots we were working with Harrington Hospital. There were only limited spots, but we did work with them. We got in touch with the people as they were signing up. We started with our 75 and over, then we went to our 65 and over. And that was something that was it was a very good thing to do. It was a feel-good moment, and it was a lot of work. We had Board of Health assistants helping us, reaching out to everyone. I do feel that we provided for Joshua Place. We were able to reach out, get vaccinations, get vaccine, and set up a vaccination clinic at Joshua Place. That was an amazing thing to do. It was helpful to the elderly that they didn't have to leave there. We did it right there. We worked very well with the EMS. It was wonderful. The only thing I wish I could change was that the state would have given local boards of health access to the vaccine so that we could have our own vaccination clinics. I think that would have streamlined things quite a bit.
Fantastic. Thank you kindly. And well done explaining that action during the pandemic. In terms of roles relative to the Board of Health, tell us what you know about the other non-global pandemic related roles of the Board of Health and what you see as the board's top 3 priorities.
Okay. First off, I would say food inspections. One of the primary goals of the Board of Health is to inspect all restaurants and retail stores, anyone who's selling food, any bars. So I think that's very important. The health agent goes out twice a year to make sure that everything is up to code, that the products you're purchasing, the food you're being served is done in a safe and proper manner. The second thing I would say would be public health. Reaching out to people who need the flu vaccine, getting them where they need to be, having information about when EEE came a couple years ago. We were right there, we were working with the schools, with the town administrator on what to do, how to do things, and educating the public as quickly as we could. As we were getting information from DPH and the state, we were putting it out to the public. So I think that's extremely important. We're kind of the middle person to educate the town. And then third, I would say, is septic design and inspections. Any house that's not on town sewer has to have a septic system. It has to be done up to code. If it's not done properly and up to code, you'll have a failing septic system, which can create many other health hazards and can contaminate water that's around. And that I feel is an important thing as well, is making sure that septic systems are designed properly and inspected thoroughly.
Thank you very much. Very eloquent response to that question. Question number 4 focuses on interdepartmental cooperation. So as you think about that, what role does interdepartmental cooperation play in terms of public health? And if you could provide an example.
Okay. I'm going to use the pandemic. We worked very closely with EMS, police, the town administrator, the Board of Selectmen. When it first started, we would meet weekly to make sure that everyone was on the same page, the information was coming out properly from DPH, and that everyone knew what the guidelines were, how to proceed. When we were able to have our clinic for the COVID vaccination, we worked with EMS. They provided us 4 paramedics, which helped draw up the vaccine, give the vaccinations. I think that you have to work hand in hand quite a bit. Twice a year, we're required by the Worcester Public Health to do drills, and our drills are in coordination with the EMS. It's either the fire chief or Paul. We work very closely with them. We have to set up drills twice a year to practice for something like the pandemic or anything that may come along. So I think you have to have good cooperation and good communication with all the departments.
Fantastic, thank you. Audience, just so you're aware, that does conclude our prepared questions for the Board of Health and candidate Knoyer. Is there anyone from the audience that has any questions? Yes, Ms. Smith.
First, I'd like to thank you for, can I take the mask off while I talk?
I suppose that's acceptable.
First,
Is
I'd
that
like to,
acceptable?
first, I'd like to thank you for wanting to run again this year after the pandemic. And I know you went into great detail in your responses. But can you tell me, it's a 2-part question, what is your greatest accomplishment that you have achieved this year? And also, what was your greatest struggle that you had?
So we will have 90 seconds for the response. Greatest accomplishment and greatest challenge or struggle.
Okay. I think the greatest accomplishment we had was being able to provide a vaccination clinic to the senior housing up at Joshua Place. That was one of the best things that I feel that we could have done. It was an amazing day. It was a good event. People were so happy and so thankful that they only had to go down to the community center, not travel to Southbridge. I know Southbridge isn't that far, but to some of our seniors, it is quite a ways. And we were able to also provide vaccinations for homebounds, which I think is a very key thing. These people who could not get home, they were able with EMS and the health agent to go out and provide vaccinations to them at home. The thing that struggled with the most, DPH, not even DPH as much as the state not trusting in the local boards of health. We do these clinics twice a year for a pandemic. We're well prepared. We have a public health nurse. We had many people willing to volunteer, but they would not give the vaccine to the local boards of health. We tried and tried and tried, but we could not get it. We would request week after week and were denied. And that was the biggest struggle, because I don't think the public understood that we couldn't just get them vaccinations.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any additional questions in the audience? Seeing none and hearing none, Ms. Knoyer, there is a 3-minute opportunity for you to summarize your candidacy with us here this evening.
So, over the past 12 years, I have enjoyed my time on the Board of Health. We've implemented a lot of different things. I've learned a lot of different things, and I think we're trying to make the Board of Health more involved in the public. And that is my goal, if I'm reelected for the next 3 years, is to continue to make the Board of Health more public, more out there in the public. It's been a struggle over the years. You know, everybody knows you have different things. You have budget cuts, you lose a health agent, you gain a health agent, things change, and it is difficult at times to stay up, but we're doing our best to try to educate ourselves. Everyone on the board right now takes the time to take trainings, learn things, are more than happy to sit down and learn about something, and we want to educate the public, and we're hoping to make a bigger presence in the town. We now have our own public health nurse, which I think is amazing, and that is going to benefit us. And I'm hoping that I can continue on for the next 3 years to see where we can go and what we can do. We're hoping, and we're seeing some things coming down from DPH, that more might be put on the Board of Health, and we're looking forward to those challenges. You know, we want to, my main goal and our board's main goal is the public health and safety of everyone in this town. And that's what we strive for, and that's what we're trying to do. And I hope that you'll consider me for re-election so that I can continue to do that and continue to learn. And I thank you all for listening to me go on, and thank you for letting me be here this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Knoyer.
You're welcome. Sorry, got the chair.
Oh, it's okay, you got my attention. At this time, I'd like to welcome up candidates for school committee, Ms. Kathleen Carmignani and Ms. Caitlin Panzik. How are you?
Good.
Marvelous. Well, I had assigned random letters, and I let my kids decide which name was going to be A and which name was going to be B. Ms. Panzik, you were letter A. So you will be our first introduction. You'll have 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the community and the voters here in Dudley relative to your candidacy for school committee. I turn it over to you.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Panzik, and I'm running for a seat on the Dudley-Chilton Regional School District School Committee Board. Thank you for coming tonight and listening to all the candidates. I'm honored to be here and excited for a chance to represent the children of Dudley. I'd like to start off with a little bit about myself. I've lived in Dudley for the last 12 years, and before that I lived close by in Webster. I returned to this community soon after getting married and before starting my family. My husband and I were excited to return to the community that I grew up in as a child myself and raise our family here. I have 3 children that go to Dudley schools. Emma's 11 and she goes to Dudley Middle. Olivia is 8 and attends Dudley Elementary, and Ben is 5 and will be going to kindergarten in the fall at Mason Road. I'm a full-time registered nurse, and I work in the maternity department at UMass Memorial in Worcester. I have 3 goals for running during this election. Number 1 is to bring students back to be the priority for all decisions being made. Parents are the voice of the children and need representation on the board. Investing in our children of Dudley benefits everyone in our community, and as Dr. Dixon, CEO of UMass, once said, Kids represent 10 to 15% of the population, but they're 100% of our future. If decisions are made with the best interests of the student, all other decisions will always fall into place. Number 2, we should lead with scientific data for all policies, rules, and regulations. As a nurse, it's important we seek for the most up-to-date evidence-based data and implement it in our schools to keep our children and staff safe. We live in a community of knowledgeable professionals, those that understand risk and benefit ratio, and it's important that we rely on them to make the best decisions and implement them into policy. An educated person knows what they know, but they also have to know what they don't know. Relying on resources to make informed decisions will achieve the best outcome. And finally, I want to be budget conscious. I'd like to identify areas of need while eliminating areas of misuse. The needs of the school have changed over the year, and every decision that affects the budget must be looked at through a COVID lens. Although the pandemic restrictions continue to be lifted, COVID has impacted our students and staff and will require attention over the next few years or decades. I've always been active within the school district since my children entered. I volunteer my time at Walking Club at Dudley Elementary to ensure student safety while physical activity is integrated into recess. I was a parent library volunteer to help foster the love of reading for the students after librarian positions were cut within the district just a few years ago. I volunteer my time and/or attend many Dudley PTO events. I served on the Parent Advisory Council at Mason Road. I'm the author of the parent petition that was started in this past fall to achieve more live and synchronous learning, as both students and teachers found asynchronous learning to be difficult. I'm qualified for this position and would bring a necessary strong voice to the table. I saw the timer going down,
Thank you
so I was trying
very
to
much.
rush.
I did notice you glancing. I gave you the few seconds. I could tell you were winding down. Mrs. Carmignani, you have 3 minutes for your introduction to the
Thank you.
community.
So my name is Kathy Carmignani, and I have lived in Dudley since about 2009. I live with my husband, Richard, and my 2 children, Mary, who is 6 and attending Mason Road, and Richard, who is 9 and attends Dudley Elementary. So since moving to Dudley, I've been involved with many committees and activities. I worked with the Recreation Committee. I was elected as a library trustee. I've been a Cub Scout den leader to my son's troop. I have coached Dudley youth basketball, and I ran last term as a write-in candidate for the school committee when there was no one to serve. In my time in this position, I have served as vice chair of the superintendent search committee, as well as being selected to serve as the liaison to the Special Education Parents Advisory Committee. Currently, I'm a member of the Budget Finance Committee, as well as the Teaching and Learning Committee. My love and passion for teaching students of all levels and abilities set a tone of high expectations, both academic and social. One of the most critical duties of the school committee member is to make sure that we are thinking of the needs of our students, our staff, and our town. Our educators' role is to inspire our teachers to continuously challenge themselves and support them to secure an environment where this can happen. This begins with building relationships and fostering open lines of communication with the staff, with the community, and with the other members of the committee. My educational background, I graduated from WPI with an actuarial math degree, which will certainly serve me with budgets and finance. I have 2 master's degrees, one as a school counselor and one as an administrator. Since that, I have done extra PDPs as in my SEL, which is a sheltered English language immersion, as well as special education in other areas, math included. I've been an educator for 23 years now. The first year I was able to be a one-to-one aide for a student in a middle school, and since then I've worked in Northborough, Southborough school system, and I've served as a guidance counselor for 2 years, a math teacher for 18, and recently I am the school assistant principal for the high school. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your introduction, both Ms. Panzik and Ms. Carmignani. At this time, we'll transition into our prepared questions this evening. Ms. Carmignani, you have drawn the first opportunity to respond. Expectations. What do you think is expected of you as a school committee member? And reminder, we have 2 minutes for responding to the prepared questions.
That's going to be hard too. I will say that, above all, I need to have an open mind going into these meetings, and I have to be able to listen to all members of the committee and all the staff, the students, the community as well, because I think that there's going to be different voices and everybody has to have a voice. And my job is not to just be my voice. My job is to be the voice of the committee and the voice of the community. And that's truly important. Yeah, that's it.
Marvelous. Thank you. Ms. Panzik, it is the same question. What do you think is expected of you as a school committee member?
I think it's expected to uphold those that elect you as a committee member. You're elected by the community. It is important to have a strong teamwork and a relationship with the administration of the board, or not the board, of the administration, I'm sorry. You're responsible to oversee the superintendent, and the superintendent is responsible to oversee the schools. So it's important for the committee to give the superintendent what he or she needs, the resources, vote on budget, vote on policies, vote on anything that the superintendent might bring to the committee. But it's really the committee's responsibility to help the superintendent with all the jobs and the roles that he has to oversee for the school to function. I think it's important, like I said, for teamwork. It's important for you to be loyal to the community, to be open-minded, and to be honest. Good.
Marvelous. Thank you. Well spoken, well stated, both of you. Question number 1 is done. You can breathe that sigh of relief now. The hot question doesn't come until later.
Oh, great.
The relationships. What kind of relationships should the school committee have with its community, with its parents and families, with faculty and staff? Ms. Panzik?
So, I kind of already said this, but it has to be honest, it has to be open-minded. It's important to kind of hear all the thoughts out there and bring them forward. Work as a team. There's many different stakeholders, from the parents to the teachers to administration. They all have to function together in order to make it work. So it's good to get everyone's thoughts, everyone's ideas, but ultimately it has to be about the children at the end of the day, whatever's best for them. As a nurse, I work in healthcare. I work with doctors, physical therapists, pharmacists. No matter what we see, what we all think, at the end of the conversation, it always has to be about patient safety. And I think that's true about school. It has to be about the child. We always have to put them as the priority as we go through each and every problem that we come across, and also accomplishments that we achieve.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mrs. Carmignani, what kind of relationship should the school committee have with its community, with its parents and families, with faculty and staff?
Great, thank you. I'll start first with the community. One of the things that I went to the budget meeting the other day with the selectmen, and one of the things I realized that we need to do more work on as a committee for the school department is to really work with our selectmen hand in hand, because it's not going to be easy in the next few years with our budget, and we need to think about that, because it has to be, yes, we are all about the students, and we have to work within our budget to be all about the students and be fiscally responsible for the townspeople as well. So I think that has to happen. With our parents and families, one of the things that I really pushed this year was to have surveys out to our parents and families, because I think that so often we don't ask, I know, Caitlin, I was able to ask a lot of people on Facebook what do you think at the beginning of this pandemic? But not everyone is on Facebook, so I think you have to be able to ask everybody, and reaching out to all those constituencies, as well as asking parents, asking families, asking students. And that was a really key one to us, really getting the students' voice and listening to what they wanted, and also listening to our staff, because they are thinking about what's in the best interest of our students at all times. And that's what I would bring. I also think that part of the relationship I have is that I am an educator and I am an administrator, and I think that that brings a lot of value to this role, because I do know what the problems are day to day. I've been in the trenches of a teacher and I know what they deal with. I've been in the trenches of an administrator and I know how hard this year has been. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Mrs. Carmignani, you are able to address the question around challenges. What are the current challenges that face the Dudley Charlton Regional School District?
Sure. I think there are many challenges that we face. One of them is definitely our budget, and working within our budget to make sure that our students have everything that they need. I think this past year has been terrible for our students and our staff and our community. And how do we move forward from that? How do we go through and measure our achievement gaps? And what do we do? Like, can we look for grants? Can we look for other means of resources? I think we need to think about our social emotional needs of our students, because that is really, they've been truly affected, and we need to look at that. We just recently went through as a committee and hired on some additional school adjustment counselors, which our kids need. They're really struggling, and we need to help them move forward and give them that resilience. Our parents did an amazing job, and they should be applauded for what they did this year. And I think now it's our turn to help them too, and keep moving forward. So, thank you.
Excellent. Ms. Panzik, what are the current challenges from your perspective facing the Dudley Charlton Regional School District?
I have to agree. I think that budget is a big topic, especially in our school district. We all know that we're one of the lowest per pupil expenditures in the state. However, when you compared our district to other districts this year, we, I think, had a very slow start. As Kathy mentioned, our students suffered because of it. And I think that we have a lot of work ahead of us for the students over the last year. COVID, it's not gone, even though a lot of the restrictions are being lifted. There's so much work to be done. And I don't even think we've seen some of the work, because, as I mentioned, I have 3 kids, and all of them have struggled over the last year in different ways. But my son, who's just entering kindergarten, I think that class is going to have an enormous difficulty as they transition from being told not to share, not to, not touch your mask, not do this, and then to kind of reintegrate how it should be and how it once was. So I think that not only the students that were in school last year, as we mentioned, have had issues because of the restrictions, which were necessary, but we have a lot of work ahead, and so we have to be creative with our budget. I hope to see the students that did leave the district, and there were a lot that either chose to homeschool or go to private school. I hope to see those students come back, because I think it will affect our budget in a good way. And hopefully there's always room for improvement, so we just gotta keep working on it.
Thank you both. You did identify a couple of mountains and a couple of hills that we've to climb, certainly in the coming year and years ahead. We're going to transition over to decision making. Ms. Panzik, you'll lead this question off. In making significant decisions for our schools and our students, what are the steps the school committee should take? In answering this, please use a past or upcoming decision as an example.
So this, again, was already talked about. I think that talking to each stakeholder, so I do agree that the surveys were a wonderful way to get ideas, opinions from all the stakeholders. Surveys went out to staff, surveys went out to parents, surveys went out to students, and it was very interesting to see the presentations at the committee meetings, to see kind of where all the opinions landed, and sometimes they were very similar and sometimes they were very different. And oftentimes I was kind of shocked at what other people wanted, because you think that it's something that, you know, you're not always allowed to kind of say what you want. And I'm referring back to when we were talking about the 4 different models being implemented after the reopening plan. There was a lot of people that wanted Model C and Model D, and I honestly thought that there wouldn't be a lot. So I was very interested to see the majority of parents and a lot of students and staff that wanted to go back and be back in school. It's just not something you would think of when you ask your child if they want to go back 5 half days, 5 full days. You know, most kids just want to stay home, but so many kids, I think that they'll probably always appreciate the chance to go to school. And so when making decisions, it's important to get everyone's opinion and base it on that. I think there was a second part, but I can't recall.
Looking at the steps the school committee should take in making those decisions and addressing a past or upcoming decision.
So again, with all decisions being made, the student has to be the priority. They have to be the number one reason to make the decision when making any type of decision.
Excellent. Thank you kindly. Mrs. Carmignani, in making significant decisions for our schools and our students, what are the steps the school committee should take? In answering this, please use a past or upcoming decision as an example.
Sure. I think one of the things that I do best is ask difficult questions and really analyze problems. I think that one of the hardest decisions that I had to make this year was a recent one, and when we had to cut $500,000 out of our school budget. That hurt, but that was something that we needed to look at our funding and look at how we could work with the town and look at honestly what was the impact and what was going to be the impact to the education of our children. Could we do it without really impacting the class sizes? So I think when I make a decision, I really look at all the different causes that might have, you know, the different effects that it might have on our children, on our staff, and really go in and look at what the opinions are of our community and make that decision. And it's not always a decision that I truly personally would have went in and done right away. I never wanted to cut money out of our budget, never. But I think that it was the best decision for our community to have our budget be passed. So another decision this year that was a little tough was our school, our local boards wanted to close school the first 2 weeks after the vacation. And I fought hard for that not to happen. I really looked at the impact that would have on our students and the emotional impact that would have on them, and just even them having food and being able to come to school and be fed, and what that would do to them. So I think sometimes you have to go against the grain and really stand up for the rights of our students.
Thank you very much, both of you, for the responses to those that question. Our final prepared question talks about experience and strengths and areas of improvement. It's a 2-part question. Mrs. Carmignani, you'll be able to address both parts in your 2 minutes. What is your past or present experience or connection with the Dudley Charlton Regional School District? And what do you think are areas of strength and areas for improvement in the DCRSD?
Can you repeat the first one again?
Yes. What is your past or present experience or connection with the DCRSD?
Okay. Well, obviously, I have been a school committee member for the past 3 years, and you know, within that time, I have certainly gotten to know what our school's all about. When I first ran for the position, I come from a very high demanding district and a high achieving district, and I wanted to make sure that I could provide any resources I could to our district, because we certainly do a great job with our students, but we can always be better, and we can always expect more. And so I think some of our strengths of our district is the dedication of our staff. It's amazing. You know, I was getting calls 9 o'clock at night to make sure everything was okay. They did a great job during COVID for what they could do. It was really tough. And even before that, they've always done a great job. And I think the other strength of our district is our community. You know, the amount of spirit within our community and caring is really, it's high. You know, I see how our parents are involved. I see how our community's involved when we have even in Dudley, just having our kids coming to the town hall for all our Christmas events and our Halloween events, and how special that is. And I came from Lynn, which is a very big city, and to see this small town community warmed my heart, and it made me want to be here. I think our challenges, well, we need to make sure that we keep improving, and we look at our budget and think of ways, what can we do and think differently? You know, can we grab the grants? I'm done on a time, sorry.
Thank you kindly. Ms. Panzik, I will repeat the question for you. So what is your past or present experience or connection with the DCRSD? And what do you think are areas of strength and areas for improvement in the DCRSD?
So as I mentioned, I have 3 kids that go to 3 different Dudley schools this year and next year, actually. I've volunteered my time since my children have entered the district while working still, and I was going to school for my master's when they first entered too, so it was busy, but I felt it was important to make time. When I do volunteer in the schools, I get to see them, interact with their friends, I get to know their teachers a little bit better, so I feel it's important to be involved. Strengths, I think that, as I mentioned, we are on the lower end of per pupil expenditure for the state, yet we have this wonderful reputation of being a great district, and that's not typically something that goes hand in hand, but I think it comes from the fact that so many people that work within the district also live in the community, work within the town, and so it's not just a student, but it might be their neighbor, a friend's child. You can really tell that the teachers put their blood, sweat, and tears into everything they do. I live pretty close to the schools. I drive by often. I know some of the teachers' cars, and they're there very late some days, and they put a lot of extra time and effort into everything they do, and it really shows, and it really keeps that reputation that we have so strong. Areas of improvement, I think that, as I mentioned, every other district in the state was up against the same hardships during this pandemic. I think we are off to a slow start. I think we have a lot of ground to make up on, and I think that we can definitely improve, and we can always be better. We can always strive for better.
Excellent, thank you. You both did an excellent job with some challenging questions being thrown at you. Wondering if there are any members of the audience who have questions for our candidates here this evening. Yes?
Good evening. So recently there has been a push for much needed curriculum reform by students and teachers at Shepherd Hill. In particular, the English, history, and health curriculums have been criticized as not being up to date with modern society and not inclusive enough of other cultures and views. Additionally, our schools currently lack civic education and clubs. Would you support efforts to reform our curriculum, and if so, what would you contribute to the discussion?
Ms. Panzik, would you support those initiatives, and what would your recommendations be?
I think it's important to always have an open mind. Times are always evolving, and I experienced this in my own profession. I think it's important. I think that there is a way to be cautious about the way that things are implemented. We live in a community of many different people, and it has to be done in such a way that it's not going to hurt anyone. But I think it's always good to have an open mind to expanding the curriculum in the schools.
Thank you. Mrs. Carmignani? Same question. What would you support these recommendations, and what actions would you take?
Sure, absolutely. I also work at a high school that's looking at, looking into their cultural sensitivity in those curriculum areas. And I think that that's going to be very, very helpful when we start working in our teaching and learning subcommittee on these areas. I think that, in our English textbooks and our history books, like what else, without having to go out and buy new textbooks, what kind of artifacts can we bring in? Can we bring in books that our students are actually represented in? Can we make sure that we teach all the history and really looking at it? I know our civic education, it's coming down in the 8th grade level now, and we've recently had some grants to get our teachers' professional development in that. So I think that's truly important for our students. I think in our health curriculum, I watch my health teachers all the time talking about sleep deprivation for high school students, sexual education, sexual wellness, really hard topics to talk about, but I think much needed in this time, because if they need to hear it, and they need to hear it in a safe space, and we need to have that kind of safe space. So I definitely would do that. And as far as, did you say clubs and activities as well?
Regarding civic engagement, yes.
Regarding civic engagement, okay. I do think too, we do need to look at our clubs and activities. Sorry, thank you.
We are up against that one. Thank you. Thank you very much. Additional questions from our audience? Yes.
So from early in the morning, there's like hundreds of cars and school buses heading to all the different schools. And then during the day, the schools are, running the buildings, heating them, lighting them, stuff like that. And then, in the evenings, there's the sports programs with, a lot of lights going on outside. And I think you put this together, and it's probably the largest, or one of the largest carbon footprints in the town of Dudley. And so how could you give me some specifics on how do you think you would address lowering this footprint and trying to meet the mandates that are coming up, and to meet the goals that the state has set for lowering carbon emissions and becoming a net zero community?
I want to go ahead and summarize that question down to how would you address the carbon footprint of DCRSD, and what recommendations would you have for minimizing it? If we start getting into legislation, we'll be way over a minute and a half. So how would you address the carbon footprint of the DCRSD, and what recommendations would you have to minimize that, Ms. Carmignani?
Sure. One of the things that I was able to do before the pandemic hit is I was able to go to the school committee conference, and we were able to watch and listen to different companies that had ways to address this exactly. Some of them being, whether you have solar carports, different methods like that. I also think, we're hopefully having some work with our facilities and looking at what types of different lighting do we have in schools? How much of it do we need? Because it's amazing how much you can actually save budget-wise by changing little things. How do we handle our electronics at the end of a day? Do we shut them off? How do we do it on the weekends? How do we do it on vacations? As far as the traffic right now, I think, unfortunately, that is an issue of the pandemic, and I can't fault parents for dropping their kids off at school if they're able to. I think that, as the pandemic lifts, as more students are vaccinated, we'll see more students on our buses, hopefully, and that should reduce that impact as well.
Thank you. Ms. Panzik, regarding the district's carbon footprint, how would you address the carbon footprint for DCRSD and what recommendations to minimize them?
So I do have to agree, it's a little bit difficult with the pandemic. I remember seeing the buses nearly empty even prior to the pandemic, and some days they appear that way. I know some districts do charge for buses, especially if you live a certain distance from the school. I always wondered if that was a possibility for Dudley Charlton, so that the people that sign up for the buses are committed. For me, example, I leave my house at 6 a.m., so I am unavailable to drop off my children when I'm working on the days that they attend school. So I do think it's a little bit difficult to minimize the bus usage, especially as we try to spread children out. My own child just had a quarantine because she had an exposure on the bus. So I think it's important that we do continue to spread them out as much as possible, at least until our quarantine policy is adjusted. Also, I forget where I was gonna go. I do live right near the fields. I see the lights on very often, especially up at the high school. I do notice they're on a timer, so I think that's wonderful, and I think something like that is a great idea, especially for outdoor lights. I also see the middle school lights. Recently, as I was dropping my son off at speech, I did see a classroom, and this is kind of the silver lining to COVID. Everyone's been very creative. I did see a class sitting outside, so I think, as always, creativity will help us reduce the carbon footprint.
Excellent. Thank you both. Yeah, great question, by the way. Thank you. Additional questions from the audience? Yes?
Ms. Panchik, you mentioned to me that you would like to see changes. Can you enumerate what changes you have in mind?
Yeah, well, we can go ahead with that question. It might be able to go a little bit deeper. What changes would you envision DCRSD undertaking in the next year or two?
So as I mentioned, I do hope that there is more steps back to normalcy pre-pandemic. Eventually, as vaccinations have increased, we have to get back to being able to have the children play together again. And like I said, I have a 5-year-old, so he remembers going to preschool and seeing his friends and playing at the play centers with his friends. So taking steps back to how school was prior to the pandemic is important to me. I think we've done a great job with our mitigation strategies, and some of them are going to benefit us for years to come, such as the HVAC that we invested nearly millions of dollars into to fix and improve. I think that that's fine, that we will still benefit, but eventually I hope to see the kids be able to be less than 3 feet and attend school regularly, whether they're healthy, and if they're not, then that's when they need to stay home. My daughter missed a lot of school this year because of quarantines, and she was never sick. So I would like to see steps taken towards how it was prior to COVID. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Carmignani, changes to come in the DCRSD from your eyes?
Sure. I think one of the changes we need to think about is our building infrastructures. I think we have a lot of buildings that are falling apart in some ways. We have, I think Dudley Middle School needs a new roof, and that's a need, and it's not something that we can't do. And I think we need to look and see how we're going to afford that and how we're going to pay for that. I think we need to look at, how our students are going to be competitive in the future, and part of that is giving them competitive places to learn. We look at our high school, and our high school is going to need to be rebuilt or be renewed at some point. They do an amazing job at the high school, and I don't deny that. They have amazing programs. But I think they're teaching in a substandard building for what they need, and our students deserve more. You know, I look at what my students get to go to every day, and it's the haves and the have-nots, and how do we get our students to be the haves, you know, and make sure that they're competitive in our college selection processes, in our workforce, because not everyone goes to college, you know, and how we do that, and really making sure that, and separately, that we address our students' needs in the future, and what will that be, you know? We have a lot of special education needs that we need to address.
Excellent. Thank you both very much for addressing your ideas and challenges. We do have a final opportunity for a question for our school committee candidates. Seeing none, we'll transition into our opportunity to address our audience with your closing. You'll have 3 minutes each, and we will go back to that the beginning order. Ms. Panzik, the clock is yours.
Thank you once again for your time and interest in listening to me and my goals. It is so important, especially during this pandemic, that we have strong leaders that make decisions for our children. I have a sign that says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. All the time and energy I've already invested in this is because of my children. They are my motivation for all that I have done and all that I will continue to do to ensure that our reputation here at Dudley is upheld. We're lucky, and we should be excited for the fact that we have options when voting this year, but no matter what the outcome is, I think Dudley will have a strong advocate for the kids. I would be proud to serve the children of the Dudley Charlton Regional School District for the next 3 years, and on June 14th, I humbly ask for your vote, as I'm dedicated to invest my time for the benefit of our community's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Carmignani, the floor is yours for a closing.
Great, thank you. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting my candidacy 3 years ago, and I hope to continue that as well. You know, I run for this position because I want to be able to have my experience help our children. You know, I certainly, my own children would complain about the amount of meetings that I go to on a daily basis or a weekly basis, but I don't think that they would complain about their experiences in school, and that's what's important. I think that my personal background is going to be really important in this future. I think that I have a lot to provide the school district and provide the school committee. You know, I'm right now the only sitting member that is currently an educator. And I think that that's important to have an educator on your board. You know, definitely my other Dudley board members are retired teachers, but I think being in the trenches day to day and being able to kind of it gives me a whole different lens and a whole different appreciation for what our students are going through and what our teachers are going through, and how to help them. You know, we talk about the carbon footprint. You know, I look at all the things that my district has done to make sure that we've lowered our carbon footprint, and what can I do to bring some of those experiences to our district. You know, I look at, I ran the remote program for my district this year, and I look at all the different things that we did, and we really, you know, I think one of my strengths is thinking outside the box and really thinking about what else can we do for our kids, and knowing that sometimes rules are great, but maybe every kid needs to have, you know, not every kid's equal, and we need to look at that. I think my experiences, you know, even doing professional development is going to help our district, you know, especially with the professional development I've had on cultural sensitivity, and how we can provide our cultural sensitivity into our curriculum, whether it be at the high school level or be at the elementary level. You know, having my daughter pick up a book and having it be about a person of a different culture is important. They need that. They don't always see it day to day, but they need it, because eventually they're going to leave Dudley. I hope they come back, but they are going to leave, and I want to make sure that they've seen and they're exposed to life and life of everyone. Again, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to serve the town members, and I hope that I can get to continue that.
Thank you both very, very much for representing your candidacy this evening. Job well done and a great example for those still to come this evening. At this time, I'd like to welcome up our candidates for Treasurer-Collector, Mr. Richard Carmignani and Mrs. Kelly Laskowski. Thank you both for joining us. Mr. Carmignani and Ms. Laskowski, you will be in that order for your opening introduction. Mr. Carmignani, I'd like you to go ahead and take the opportunity for 3 minutes max of introducing yourself to the public and to the voters of Dudley.
I smile. The counter is from me. You see everything I bring, and you've heard me at a town meeting. We have notes, so things are sort of shortened. Rich Carmignani, Shepherd Hill, class of '88, St. Anselm College, '92, a Bachelor of Arts in Business, MBA from Nichols. Only made it 3 classes through a Master's of Science in Finance over at Clark University. I was on the Finance Committee from the summer of 2000 to 2002 December, when I became the treasurer. The collector had left in May of 2012. And they asked me if I would fill in. So I've been here for 19 years. In that time, I have served for 3 years as the Worcester County Collectors Treasurers Association president. I currently sit on their executive committee. President of the State Association, which means I also chaired the legislative committee and the education committee. I currently sit on that executive board to this day. I have gone through and, I'm going to go off topic, Rich. I've been the treasurer-collector since 2012. In addition to being the treasurer and the collector, I'm also the insurance administrator. It also by statute means that I'm the representative to the Worcester Regional Retirement System. I'm also an executive member on the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust, which buys all of our health insurance. I'm sort of the de facto loss control person, the liaison with all of the retirees. And if you're not seeing me at the town, you're seeing me at an athletic field. Baseball coach, basketball, now soccer. You'll see me across the street over at St. Andrew Babola, where I sit on their finance committee. It was very interesting when we opened this week. I saw 6 retirees. They needed to come in to see me, if for no other reason than to make sure that I was still here. I thank you for the last 19 years. I made a commitment a long time ago that I was going to grow with this job. I was going to make certain that this job was done well. I made the commitment, as long as the voters supported me, I would remain here and make things run well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmignani. Mrs. Laskowski, sorry. Your opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience, the public, and the voters for June 14th.
Thank you. Please bear with me. It's my first time doing this, and I'm very nervous. So thank you for having me. My family and I have lived in Dudley since 2007. My husband Frank and I have 2 children, Desmond and Olivia. We are parishioners at St. Anthony of Padua, and we are a scouting family, just like the Knoyers. I was a den leader and cub master for Pack 274, and I'm currently a committee chair member for Troop 273. And for the past 4 years, I have been my daughter's Girl Scout troop leader. Earning my Bachelor's of Science in Political Science has laid the foundation for my work in local government. I am currently the Assistant Tax Collector for the town of Webster. I've learned a great deal in my 14 years in the department, and I look forward to the opportunity to bring that experience to this position. I will also bring upgrades to the department and customer service to the taxpayers. I will work with all the residents of this town to the best of my ability. I will work with Tatum and Donna. I will work with the Selectmen and the Town Administrator to perform the duties of the Treasurer Collector to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. We now know a little bit about each of our candidates. Now it's time to dig in. Ms. Leskowski, you will have the first opportunity to respond to question number 1 related to goals. What are the 3 primary goals that you wish to accomplish during your term as Dudley's Treasurer Collector? And how do you intend to accomplish them?
Thank you. So my number 1 goal would be to update the efficiency in the office, starting with the software that is used. I used Point when I started in Webster, and I can say that it is slow, outdated, and is unreliable. There are many options that are available, and I would work with town leadership to find the most cost-effective solution to best fit the town needs. I would also implement conveniences such as in-house check scanning, so when a person comes in to pay a bill, the check is scanned immediately right to the bank and deposited, so there's no delay in cashing a check, and the town starts earning interest immediately. I would also look into implementing services such as a lockbox system. Lockbox is used by over 150 cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts. It offers the taxpayer another convenient way to pay their bills. By using the envelope provided with the bill, it is sent directly to the bank. Payments are processed and deposited the same day they are received. Not only does this give the taxpayer another option to pay the town, but it also alleviates mail piling up in the office and waiting to be processed. I would also offer the taxpayers a more user-friendly online payment option. A system like City Hall Systems not only offers online bill pay, but it also offers payment reminders, decreasing the chance of missing a payment. And taxpayers can also access all of their account information and their payment histories, which comes very in handy during tax season when everyone's calling looking for what they paid in their real estate bill. And last, I would work to create a strong, positive working relationship between myself, the staff, other departments, the selectmen, and the town administrator. It is a team effort to keep the town running, and it is vital to keep the lines of communication open and to create a cohesive environment.
Excellent, thank you very much. Mr. Kamignani, what are the 3 primary goals that you wish to accomplish during your term as Dudley's Treasurer Collector? And how do you intend to accomplish them?
Thank you. I've been here for 19 years, so my relationships have been built. As far as efficiencies go, I think we're doing quite a bit with less. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, we're still 96.5%, 15 days out from a real estate bill. The options of additional payments have been revisited a few times. There wasn't enough money to move forward on those. As far as my goals, it's some bigger picture goals. Number 1 is to return to some sort of normalcy. We need to get the assistant and the clerk up to speed. The office has been pretty much vacant pre-COVID, and now post-COVID, we have newer employees. We need to get people there moving at speed. It's my experience that's going to bring them up to speed. I've taught at the Mass Collectors Treasurers Association. I had an assistant who left with her certification as an assistant treasurer and is now working in another community. There's a few other big picture items. The budget process, this is the 3rd budget with Town Administrator Ruda. There needs to be more framework in there. We need to know 1, 2, 3 years out. We went through a ratings call. There were things that were considered adequate, not excellent. You want to grow a school, you want to be able to go through and grow economic development. Your foundation needs to be super strong. As far as moving things forward, all of the water and the sewer infrastructures that are coming through, my job is to be that cornerstone, the person who gets these things done in a timely manner without errors. The water infrastructure is going to show that shortly. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for your response to your question around goals. Mr. Kamignani, regarding the role, Describe for voters what you know about the statutory requirements and the additional duties that are required and taken on by the Dudley Treasurer Collector, and about your qualifications for those roles.
It's custodian of all funds, trust, tax title custodian. By job description, I'm the insurance administrator, which falls into a whole different realm of things. We have a health insurance policy manual. When we did the review 3 years ago, we made sure that the surviving spouse of a retiree had the health insurance coverage written in. To the flip side, we had compliance on that. We made certain that everybody who was supposed to sign up for Medicare starting in 2011 had done so. Went through and updated helped the MCTA update the collector and treasurer manuals when the Municipal Modernization Act went through. Got off topic for a second. As far as other statutory things, I've done everything from take a payment from somebody over at the post office to the quarterly reporting of taxes, the Affordable Care Act reporting. I did that. We do the health insurance true up. All of the compliance went through. We had an open enrollment, and I was the only person here to go through and do that. So in addition to the Worcester Regional Retirement System getting their benefits updated so that we can have a 6/1 deduction, we went through and needed to update all of the payroll. The town of Dudley is all direct deposit, as much as some people really like to have a paycheck. Goodness, in 2010, everybody went to direct deposit. Over the course of a couple of years, it's got to be $20,000 we saved. In addition, all of the health insurance, we are governed by Mass General Law 32B, and then you start to get into the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust, their rules, and you are also covered by Blue Cross, in addition to the federal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmignani. Certainly captured an awful lot of the responsibilities. Ms. Laskowski, I'll read the question for you as well and give you that opportunity. Describe for voters what you know about the statutory requirements and the additional duties that are required and taken on by the Dudley Treasurer Collector, and about your qualifications for those roles.
Thank you. If you were to look in the Mass Collector Treasurer Handbook, the list of responsibilities for a treasurer and collector is quite lengthy and goes on for pages. What I feel the most important duty of a tax collector is to make sure every personal property, real estate, excise, and water sewer bill that is warranted for collection by the Board of Assessors is collected in accordance with the laws of Massachusetts. There are, of course, many other duties that are performed by the departments. For the collector's office, for instance, they do other things such as processing payments on a daily basis, processing turnovers to the treasurer's office weekly. They do municipal lien certificates, betterment lien releases. The list goes on and on. One second. Forgive me. And as Rich said, the Treasurer's Department, they are the custodians of all funds and manages all the monetary affairs for the town. But again, that department has many other duties as well, collecting departmental transfers from all the other departments on a daily basis, depositing all the funds, working with all the banks and financial advisors to make sure the town is investing properly and getting the most out of their money. In my 14 years of Webster, I have learned a great deal. I have worked with 3 different department heads. I have assisted in the merging of the Treasurer and Collector's office. And over the past few years, I have taken on the responsibility of running the Collector's office while the appointed Treasurer Collector learns their role. I do have a lot to learn for the Treasurer side, but I will take advantage of every class, course, and resource available by the Mass Collector Treasurer Association, and I will hit the ground running to work for the people of Dudley. Thank you
very much. Ms. Laskowski, challenges and initiatives is our next topic. What do you see as the most significant challenges facing the Treasurer Collector's office over the next 3 years? And what is your plan to meet those challenges?
Sure. I think a challenge facing the town in the not so distant future is going to be paying for the new water treatment facility. I will work hard to find the best funding solutions possible for the taxpayers. I will work with the town's banks and the financial advisors to ensure the town is getting the most equity out of its investments. I will look into additional options, like setting aside free cash at the end of the fiscal year to put towards that bill. I will stay on top of legislation that might make funds available to the town to help defray the cost, or might increase things like the percentage of principal forgiveness to help the taxpayers save some money. Another challenge facing every town in Massachusetts is keeping the revenue coming in so the town can operate. I will make sure bills are issued on a regular schedule. This will allow taxpayers to better prepare and budget for their finances. I will look into cleaning up the tax title accounts, working with the town's attorneys to research if any accounts can be put through the foreclosure process and sold at auction. This would not only generate free cash for the town, but also put parcels back on the tax roll to create future revenue. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Carmignani, the question is, what do you see as the most significant challenges facing the Treasurer Collector's Office over the next 3 years, and what is your plan to meet those challenges?
My perspective is a little bit different as far as cleaning up the tax title. I've collected $924,000 since 2017, $134,000 year to date. The balance is about $430,000, of which $303,000 was committed during COVID. So we're on top of all of these things. The last 3 sales we had were $554,000. If you go to Realtor.com and you see 7 Corbin Road, A, B, and C, we sold that in 2017. So well on the way of doing things like that. As far as compliance goes, been using Capola and Capola since day one. Big challenges outside of the next 3 years. Paying for things is going to be a challenge. In 2009, we had a library. I went through and we paid off the library in 5 years. We saved $691,000 doing it. This building is going to be paid for in 2023, and there's going to be room to put $425,000 worth of debt through a debt exclusion on the tax rate and not increase the tax rate. That's one of the plans that I have right now. In addition to all of these things, there's a great deal of money that needs to be settled and is coming in. We have FEMA money, we have CARES Act money. The rules for all of these are almost on a sliding scale and change too often. I do a great deal of that reporting, very, very difficult to do that. Going forward, we're going to have the first audit in a long time because we've received more than $750,000 in federal money. So compliance is going to be one of those things. And you'd have to think, giving a different administration, there's going to be more compliance regulations.
Thank you both very much. Transitioning to customer service, half the job is collector of taxes. Since biblical times, the very nature of this role has not necessarily been synonymous with a great customer service. How do you overcome that disadvantage? Mr. Carmignani.
Give to Caesar what is Caesar. I think that's the passage we're looking for. It is customer service. As much as this is an elected position that has some independence, there were people at my counter minutes after it opened, having been closed from the pandemic. We had our drive-through, we had our online payments, we met some people at the door. As far as, we even had last week, I had my phone ring, my cell phone rang, Bridget, and I went to the door to do it. Customer service is number one. I'm not available 24/7 to do those things, which is why we're working on the training. We return telephone calls, we return emails, we mailed off slips for people who had made deposits. We even had somebody meet at the door to make sure that we had change. I am fortunate. The town of Dudley is pretty solid as far as the collections go. There are a great many people who make their payments online, and they all take advantage of the ACH. People seem to wrinkle their nose at paying an additional 3%, and the town really isn't in a position to absorb credit card charges to that. At one point, we're going to have that. Technology is just going to meet the demand. A great deal of people who are coming in during the town hall hours are asking for that service. I would say easily 1/3 of the people who come to the counter have another question. They want to pay their bill and they're asking, can I get a census book? Do you have an application for an abatement? So on and so forth. So it is a concierge service.
Thank you very much. So Mrs. Laskowski, half the job is collector of taxes. And as we heard since biblical times, the very nature of that role has not necessarily been synonymous with a great customer experience. How do you overcome that disadvantage?
I think great customer service starts before you ever see or even talk to an individual. No one likes to pay taxes, so the first step is to making their experience with the department as painless as possible. This means offering multiple, easily accessible ways to pay bills, having the ability to access their personal account information and payment history as needed and with ease. It's being physically available to the public during office hours. If they call with a question or concern, being there to answer their questions. Customer service is respect. It's treating the person on the phone or across the counter the same way you would want to be treated. Residents shouldn't dread coming into the town hall or having to deal with a department. If elected, I will work to create a positive relationship between the taxpayers and the department. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. That concludes the prepared questions portion of this evening. Are there any questions from the audience for our treasurer collector candidates? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and transition into our closing. Mr. Kamignani, you will have 3 minutes to summarize your candidacy here on this candidates night.
Thank you. Thank you for not throwing a tomato up here. This was your one chance to get back at the collector of taxes. I made a commitment to the town of Dudley. The last 19 years have not been in vain. There hasn't been an education class that has passed me by. There hasn't been a volunteer opportunity that I haven't helped someone else who is climbing up the ladder. The town of Dudley does a lot with a little bit. I've done my best to make sure that we are doing things like being part of the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust. We changed during a flat enrollment period, and this year we're down 2%. If you were to go through and take the average of the last 4 years with only half of the medical trend, we saved $160,000 doing it. We've gone through, we bid out, second year in a row, property and casualty. We saved $30,000. We had a competitor in here offering loss control with no obligation to even accept the bid going forward. We're doing our best to collect money through the tax title process, and we need to do it with velvet gloves. This is the pandemic, and no court is going to foreclose on anybody. Nobody's going to be kicked out, and at no point am I, at the collector or treasurer, going to move someone out because somebody's tenants didn't pay anything. I will continue to work with this Board of Selectmen, Capital Improvement, of which I'm one of the founding members. I'm also the person who maintains that spreadsheet. Finance Committee, I had been on there for 2 years prior to being here. I attend all of these meetings to have some input. The first thing that I'd like to see happen is a return to some normalcy. I was flattered. A few years ago, we had someone come in. Go see Rich. Don't worry, I called, he's expecting you. That's a pretty good barometer of customer service. Another one would be when you get a little note that says, miss you all, can't wait to see you. I don't want to read the lady's name, but talk about customer service. I'm sure someday she'd like to throw a stone at me, but I thank you all. As much as I'm elected independently and allowed to do whatever within the law, I will continue to serve with a smile moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamignani. Mrs. Laskowski, 3 minutes to summarize your candidacy for the public for the upcoming election on June 14th.
Thank you. I won't take up too much more of your time. I'd like to thank all of you who came out to listen to all of us talk. I would love the opportunity to work for the residents of Dudley as your treasurer collector, and I humbly ask for your vote on June 14th. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you both very, very much for representing your candidacy this evening. We had a good lens into who you are and what you bring to the table. Thank you. At this time, we'll transition over to our Board of Selectmen candidates. John Marcy, Stephen Sullivan, Anna Chudnacki Durgan, and David Durgan. Seeing as how you're both current members of the board, you feel free to leave the chair seat empty.
Well, maybe the lead vote getter will be the new chairman.
Possibly.
So if one of the other two candidates does arrive, we will just place them up at the seat and they'll join in at the point that we are in the conversation. Everyone, Mr. Marcy and Mr. Sullivan are currently sitting selectmen on the Dudley Select Board. I have down here Mr. Sullivan as my B in my A, B, C, D order. So, Mr. Sullivan, you will have 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the public of Dudley and explain a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I want to thank all the candidates that put their name into the ring to run, those that are here and those that are not. A little bit about myself. My wife Leslie and I have been married almost 20 years. We have 4 children between us who all went through the Dudley Charlton Regional School District. I've been involved, I'm trying to figure out the exact year, I can't really remember. I know Rachel, who's going to be 20, was in a stroller when I went to a candidates night at Black Tavern. I first got involved in the planning board. And when I got involved, I did it because Dudley was experiencing the beginning of their boom. We had a big growth, a lot of construction. And honestly, I didn't like what I saw. Developers were coming in, they were getting away with waivers, asking for things when they were building. And when I ran on a platform of honesty and accountability. And I said, if a developer wants a waiver that's going to benefit him, the town's going to benefit. And the direct result of that, when I'd been on for a couple of years, I worked with then firefighter Paul Konitsky, who's now assistant chief, former sewer superintendent Louis Gribb, and I crafted a reg that came up with underground cisterns for houses that are built off of town water developments. Some developers didn't want to put the cistern in. So what we did was we made them come forward with an engineering report, and if it cost $30,000 for the cistern, they had to make a contribution to the town that the town matched in kind, which generated 50% of the purchase price for the tanker that we have at the fire department now. And I believe it was $350,000 for the tanker. So we got 50% through the reg that I had crafted through the bylaw, I'm sorry. Subsequent to that, tanker's paid for, obviously. And with Chief Kochanowski, EMS director, we now dedicate any funds towards the ambulance for supplies. So I was pretty happy about that. I got involved with the Board of Selectmen, again, because I didn't like what I had seen on television and what I witnessed in person. There was decorum was deplorable. I didn't like the way meetings were ran. We had people that were obviously involved for themselves. I ran, I won, I've been here since. I've appreciated the support I've gotten through the town through the years. Recently retired from the post office after 34 years. I think that may have helped me get to meet a lot of people, get my ideas out there. And of course, not everybody likes you. And I always thank people when they vote. I thank the people that voted for me, but I especially thank the ones that don't vote for me because it makes me want to do a better job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Marcy, 3 minutes on the clock for you to introduce yourself to the public here in Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you everybody here in attendance and everybody watching at home. I'm honored to be in front of you tonight. running for my 4th term to be your Dudley Selectman. I've lived in Dudley for over 20 years. I have 2 wonderful children in the Dudley Charlton Regional School District. Anthony is 17 and Jessica is 14. We attend St. Anthony of Padua Church. A little bit more about me. I have my Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from UMass Lowell, and I have over 25 years of experience in strong business management, operations, budgeting, and process optimization in my time in several industries, including wastewater treatment, enterprise software, and data and analytics, which I believe served me well in this role. Right now, I hold a position as Senior Director of Operations at Axiom, which is part of the IPG group. And as far as my volunteering experience, I've been volunteered in Dudley for well over a decade. Like many others tonight, I was a den leader and assistant Cub Master with Cub Scouts Pack 274, and then I was a member of the Dudley FAA, Finance Appropriation and Advisory Committee, for a year. And then in 2012, residents of Dudley voted for me to be their representative and their voice as Dudley Selectman. In my 3 terms, I've been chosen by my fellow board members to be chairman twice and vice chairman 5 times. I've been a steady voice for moving Dudley forward in the most cost-effective manner possible. I have 3 pillars of focus for Dudley, and I'll talk a little about this tonight. And one, they all fall under proven experience matters, right? The first is public safety, number 1. I strongly support our police, fire, and highway departments, and I want them to be fully funded and have everything they need so our residents can feel safe and secure in their homes and businesses. One of the things I'm most proud about is pushing for 24/7 firefighter paramedic coverage that we now have, which we didn't have when I first got here. Second pillar, economic development. It's the lifeblood of new revenue growth for Dudley, so we don't have to ask for, the residents have to worry about getting, tax requests every 5 minutes. We want to make sure that we maintain a positive business environment, and we're going to reap the benefits of those efforts that we've had over the last couple of years very soon. And the final pillar is quality of life. There's many things that fall under quality of life, but we want to make sure that we support our seniors, our veterans, our students, and all our taxpayers to make sure that we have the best value for our town. I've always had positive campaigns for selectmen, issues-based, and I always want to make sure that we're moving forward. I'm not an axe grinder. I don't throw rocks, and I continue to give back to my community by using my collaboration skills and working with my fellow board members, town administrator, and our state leaders. And I humbly ask for your support on June 14th. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for that introduction. Great insight into what you bring and your experiences. Now let's get into the meat of our experience this evening. As selectmen, we have to be goal-oriented and focused on a load of items. Mr. Marcy, what are the 3 primary goals that you wish to accomplish during your term as selectman, and how do you intend to accomplish them?
Thank you, Chris. Like I said in my opening, I have 3 pillars of focus that I always have. One is public safety. We need to make sure that that's number 1. We make sure that we're properly funded, equipped, trained, right? I work to make sure that the taxpayers got their biggest bang for their buck for our new fire station, something we can be very proud about. We paid $6.7 million for that. Other towns you see are putting on the ballot, they want $30, $40, $50 million. And this town worked together to get something that we can be proud of and attract more businesses because they know we have the infrastructure in place to keep that safe. Number 2, economic development. Again, lifeblood of the new revenue growth. I always support creative ways to make that happen. I work to bring some high-value agriculture to businesses to Dudley that are going to provide millions of dollars to Dudley over the next couple of years, which means our tax rate will still remain one of the lowest in southern Worcester County and the Commonwealth. We have to make sure that money will be spent responsibly and put into our stabilization account so we could fund things that are important to our taxpayers. And quality of life, one of the things I always say is streetlights. It sounds so simple, but keeping them on was one of the things I ran on. They got shut off one day at town meeting years ago, and I said, that's not right, that's public safety. And then we worked with the Green Communities Act, and we got grants for LED streetlights, and now they take even less money to run. Quality of life, making sure the beach is open, and we have lifeguards there. Our school, quality of life. One of the things that I'm most proud of is our school. I strongly stand behind our school. That's why people move here. So to keep the people important, things that are important to them, they're important to me, and I will always be your voice, and I will work to keep those things going.
Excellent, thank you very much. Mr. Sullivan, what are the 3 primary goals that you wish to accomplish during your term as selectman, and how do you intend to accomplish them?
Well, to be honest, there was some hesitancy about me running again. I thought everything was gonna kind of end at the same time. My postal career was coming to a close, and my 18 years, I think, total public service. But there's some projects I want to see completed. I want to see the apartments at the Twin Towers completed. Since I've been on the board, we had 6 or 7 other developers who came in, walked away for whatever reason. The one we have now seems serious. Seems like they have a good plan in place. They've worked well with the town. I want to see DMA Holdings in the old Ethan Allen building. Again, another one, old mill that I want to see saved. They've both have committed to try to keep the mill in its form as best they can. The Mill Conversion Overlay District, which allows for Stevens to Twin Towers, and by extension, Ethan Allen, although it's been adapted to include marijuana, was crafted when I was on the planning board. We had buildings that were viable. Ethan Allen was a viable business, but they left because the building didn't suit their needs, and they couldn't do anything to change that. Toltec Fabric, same thing. We TIF'd them through the Board of Selectmen to keep them in town, to keep jobs, and they left also. The building just was not suitable for their needs. I'm a big proponent also of public safety. Several years ago, there was a push by some people in town to privatize our ambulance service. They wanted to bring in another town's ambulance. I was adamantly opposed against that. Other members of the board weren't quite as adamant. I was on the subcommittee that hired the fire chief, fire EMS director, and under his leadership, and with the support of the board, of which goes way back even before the chief, 24/7 was always something we wanted, and we wanted paramedic level. Dudley always didn't have that. I've worked well with the police chief. He's had staffing issues through the years, always trying to do well with staff. I work well with the highway department. I've always worked well with the public safety aspect of the town. I'd like to see that to continue. And maybe only 2 things, but split them in thirds. Police, fire, there's 3.
I think we got it. Thank you both very much relative to the goals for the next term, should you be successfully elected. As we sit down and we think about economic development, it's come up in all elements that we talked about this evening so far with all candidates in some respect. What grade would you give the town in the area of economic development since 2018? And this first question is going to be for you, Mr. Sullivan. What do you see as strengths and weaknesses in expanding Dudley's tax base and as obstacles to attracting business and development? And what's your plan?
All right, I'll take that in reverse. The biggest obstacle to Dudley is infrastructure. We need to have expansion of water and sewer where possible, because if you don't have water and sewer, it's hard to expand a business. That's something that this board has worked, and most boards I've served on, has worked well with the other independent elected water commissioners board. I just think, the goals as an economic development, I would give us a solid B+, A-. I challenge anyone to find a similar sized town with the similar demographics that we have. And we have approximately about, I think it's 80 million in projects between the DMA and the Stevens Linen. We also had a viable mill further down on Schofield Ave, where they had multiple small businesses in there because of the mill overlay district, which unfortunately had a failure of their water and has not been repaired. I'm not sure where they stand, if they're going to come back up and run. So I think, as John said, economic development is the lifeblood of any town. Recently we had a solar farm that wanted to build off of Dudley Southbridge. At town meeting, it was defeated. That's the will of the voters. But as a Board of Selectmen, and I know John feels the same way, we got up and we said to people, well, find us more, what's a viable business? Help us bring one to town. It's easy to sit in the back and criticize, or social media and criticize. Well, come forward if you got ideas. Right now, solar, marijuana are two big driving economic engines. We're not trying to be the solar capital of Southern Worcester County, nor are we trying to be the marijuana. But those are businesses that people want. They're legal, they're viable, and we tried to create a base where that came in to help us generate revenue. Some stuff was defeated, some stuff was passed. So as a board, we have to pick up the pieces, move on, take the revenues that we have, at the end of the day, have a balanced budget.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Marcy, what grade would you give the town in the area of economic development since 2018? What do you see as strengths and weaknesses in expanding Dudley's tax base and as obstacles to attracting business and development? And what's the plan?
Thank you, Chris. Stephen said that very well, I have to say. You know, we work together on many of these issues, but again, I'm going to say it again. Economic development is the lifeblood of our community, of our new tax revenue, our new base. I would give ourselves B plus or an A minus as well, or an A, because when I got here, we talked about a lot of economic development, but you know, what I heard a lot about was pizza shops and coffee, and now we have some serious businesses, and people want to invest a lot of money in our community, which will come back to everybody, so we will have money to spend things on the things that matter most to people. What's the biggest obstacle is infrastructure, right? We you know, as evidenced in the town meeting last night, the people of the town meeting voted to upgrade our water system to keep our water clean, right? And that's going to do that. But we need to expand that, our water, our sewer, if you want to bring even more businesses. Our strengths, we have a very educated workforce in the town. People care, they pay attention, they're engaged, and they want to keep us accountable to make sure the right things happen. But above all, once we have identified all of our sources of revenue, we have to make sure that they go to the right places. You know, a budget is an indication of our values and what we want to see happen. And this board, working with all of the town administrator and all of our department heads, we always put together a budget that works for the town, the school, and our residents. All right. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And for those of you in the audience who don't understand the idea of the economic development barriers that have existed here in town, this is the only tangent I'm going to go on tonight. I showed up at a public hearing years ago with my oldest daughter to learn a little bit about the process, and the topic of the meeting was about putting an adventure park into Dudley up in the Dressing Hill area. And we walked in, the room was packed, but we had found out that the petitioner had withdrawn the application to pursue the business in town because of the public outcry against it in opposition. And that is what we're faced with an awful lot here in town. Opposition, but a lack of acknowledgement and new ideas of how to go about increasing our economic development. So I appreciate the responses that both of you had. And if there are ideas that are out there in the public around our economic development, possible ways that we can increase revenues in that way.
And Mr. Moderator, just to add to that, I mean, we always try to look for things that actually fit the character of Dudley, and the things that we're talking about now certainly do that.
Absolutely. You know, so I lost an opportunity to get my daughter to understand, you know, that element of civic engagement when she was about 10 or 11 years old. Now I think she's marching down the pathway of poli-sci or some civic social activism, so got her back on the right track. Transitioning over to public safety, it's been mentioned a couple of times this evening, and you know, obviously it's one of your pillars, and Mr. Sullivan, you've referenced this as well. Mr. Marcy, speak about a significant issue facing the Dudley Police Department and the Dudley Fire and EMS Department, and how you intend to be a part of that solution.
Thank you, Chris. There's a couple of ways you can look at that. And, you know, this is the basic stuff, operational, that we can look to make sure that the police department and fire department are properly staffed. They have the right. We're still getting back to where they need to be going forward. But, you know, nationally, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, police departments and what needs to happen, and, you know, reimagining and all these sorts of things. You know, what that translates around here is there could be some potential state mandates, another unfunded state mandate that the town might have to deal with, and Chief Wayner, who's done a fantastic job, you know, with his department, with what he has, And I just want to say that there will be no defunding of our police in Dudley as long as I'm on the board. At the fire department, you know, we have, I know that they have some challenges coming up with some new equipment. That equipment lasts a long time, but when we need to replace it, it's very expensive. So we want to make sure we put the information out there. Chief Kochanowski does a fantastic job explaining to people why we need it and what the benefit is to them. Work with them to do that. And again, we have to systematically make sure that we're supporting these things. We're not just saying, oops, a truck broke, we need to replace it. We need to start planning for that in advance and having a greater outlook out to 5 years to make sure that we have those things in place.
Excellent. Mr. Sullivan, speak about that significant issue that you see as facing the Dudley Police Department and the Dudley Fire and EMS Department, and how you intend to be a part of that solution.
Well, it's funny, when someone goes first, you say something, sounds like you're piggybacking or taking from, but I agree with John. It's staffing and financing. And I want to add the highway department into that also. Fire department has, through the years, especially with Chief Kochanowski, we've had a grant-funded position, and the way that works, it's funded 150%, then the town picks up the salary. So we've been able to absorb those costs, keep those people on at the paramedic level, which is what the town wants. And if you watch the meetings, you know, I joke sometimes, no one has spent more time in the back of the ambulance than me. I've had some serious health issues, and believe me, when you pick up the phone and call 911, there's nothing more comforting than a professional firefighter, paramedic that shows up to help you, or most occasions it's the police are the first ones there. I think I've worked well with the 3 departments on public safety. At the last town meeting, we passed over to the fall, but the new highway superintendent, I had spoken to the administrator, I want to see us transition away from the 1960s mentality and model of sand. I delivered in Webster my last few years, and Webster uses the chemical. And the day after the storm, you're not crunching on the ground, you're not bringing sand in your house. Mr. Root had already spoken to Mr. Murray, and he came up with the brine, so we're going to address that down the road. The police department, always looking for cruisers. You know, they're a 24/7 department, the cars get a lot of use. We've worked well with the chief. A couple of years ago, the chief put forward a plan. We got excluded 5 cruisers, I think, over 3 years. Supported 100% by the board. We get up at a town meeting. Nobody wants to say spend more money. Like John said, fire department's got some major expenses coming up. They got some old frontline pieces of equipment. And believe me, nobody wants to be the one that calls 911 because there's a fire at their house, and we show up with a 1970-something truck or 1980 truck that's got a 45-year-old pump motor in it because that's the best we could afford at the time. So I was also on the capital improvement committee, which I'll address later with Mr. Carmignani when it started, and we addressed some of that, but that'll be later. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And it is no big deal to piggyback. If you have similar views, it's not a bad thing. And if you have different views, it might make for some good fodder later on.
Been each other's running mate for 9 years, so you tend to do that.
So relative to public health, you know, we heard our Board of Health candidates earlier this evening, and they did reference, you know, Department of Public Health and the like. But, you know, in October of this year, the Department of Environmental Protection will require public water supplies to test for PFAS. And that's something we heard an awful lot about last evening at town meeting. Mr. Sullivan, tell us what you know about the issue and what you know about the roles of the Board of Selectmen, Water Sewer Commissioners, and the town meeting voters each play in addressing it.
Well, the Water Sewer Commissioners are independent elected board. They report to the voters only. Does that mean they don't report to town hall or to town administrator? Well, indirectly. Mr. Ruda, previous administrators have worked well with the Water Sewer Commissioners. So my understanding of it is, from George Petrinos, the water superintendent, and Jeff Faulkner, the consulting engineer, the standard changed. So the water you were drinking on one day, standard changed the next day. You're still drinking the same water. Up until they changed it, it was okay. Now, is that because of knowledge that was brought out? I'm not sure. And I'm not saying I advocate my responsibility. I trust the Water Sewer Commissioners with their engineer and their superintendent to handle what needs to be handled. Obviously, the Board of Selectmen, we get the most eyes on us. When we have a meeting on a Monday night, we have the department heads do their correspondence. We always had police, fire, highway. Several years ago, I started asking for monthly water reports and sewer before they combined, because our office was the point person on a lot of calls, and our administrative assistant, Michelle, would have to either try to answer it or transfer the call. So I wanted to bring everybody into the same room, under the same tent, if that's the right way to say it. And that's how I've always tried to be a selectman. I don't call up Chief Wayner and say, put 6 cruises on tonight, it's gonna be a crazy weekend. I don't call Chief Kochanowski and say, run 2 ambulances because I think there's gonna be problems. I let the professionals do their job. And the pandemic is the perfect example. Way out of my wheelhouse, way out of my expertise. We have a Board of Health, we have a Board of Health nurse, we had Tom, who gave a lot of time to the town during this pandemic. If someone calls me, they got a question, obviously I'm gonna try to solve it, I'm gonna reach out to the right person. But my role as a Board of Selectmen is more to set policy and try to govern through the administrator, day-to-day operation of town hall. I don't get in the way of the professionals.
Thank you very much. Mr. Massey, after you explain the actual acronym PFAS to us, you don't need to do that. Tell us what you know about the issue and what you know about the roles of the Board of Selectmen, Water Sewer Commissioner, and the town meeting voters in addressing it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, kind of piggyback on a lot of what Stephen said, but it's a chemical that is in a lot of towns that have manufacturing. You know, it's a water repellent. It's in a lot of different things. And the standard that we were going under was 70 parts per trillion, and very, very recently it changed to 20 parts per trillion. And it's very hard to test for. And I've been on several committees, including Capital Improvement Committee, which I'm a voting member. I've attended all the meetings with the Finance Committee and the Water Sewer Commissioners to come up with a solution to do that. Again, the Water Sewers are the Sewer Committee are the people who drive the policy and the rates and figure out what the solution is going to be. The Board of Selectmen, you know, I trust them to do the right thing, and the town meeting voters, as shown last night, there were several articles to work towards making sure that we have clean water on that warrant, and every one of them passed, right? So we need to make sure that we get that fixed, because people deserve to have that. You know, we need to, as a selectman, represent anybody that has water, whether it's not just people on the water and sewer system, but people who have wells, right? So the Board of Selectmen, on a day-to-day basis, represent everybody with a voice to make sure that this stuff comes forward. I asked several times, you know, whether it was to the Water Sewer Commissioners, the Superintendent, the DEP themselves, to ask, you know, hey, what about the people that the most vulnerable among us? If they need bottled water, how are we going to do that, right? So we moved on to that. The Water Sewer team has ways to mitigate that going forward, and there'll be lots more information they'll be sharing with us shortly, but that's what I know about that.
Marvelous, thank you. Both obviously knowledgeable and understand how the different constituencies need to work together towards a resolution. Transitioning towards education, Mr. Marcy, this will be your first response. Speak about what you know about the challenges of meeting the regional school district and regional vocational school annual assessment, and your philosophy and approach to finding balance among municipal and educational interests.
That's a great question. As I said earlier, I'm a very, very strong proponent of public education, particularly at Dudley Charlton Regional School System. I have 2 kids. My son Anthony is graduating this year on June 6th, and the school has done a lot of cool events that are happening as we speak. My daughter Jessica is a special needs student at Charlton Middle, and she's moving up to Shepherd Hill next year, and I have nothing but the best that will happen for Jessica moving forward. It's given a lot to my family, the school system, which is why I got involved, to get back to my community. So this one really hits home for me. So that's why it's important that we make sure that we have a properly funded school system. How do I go about it? Communication, communication, communication. Right? I think when I first got involved, I think there was a lot of like a we-they scenario. It's not us against the schools or the schools against the town. we have to sit down and work, and we've done really good. I've met with, when it was Superintendent Desto, and now we're starting to meet with Superintendent LaMarche on needs and their teams, on what the school needs versus what the town needs, and we come to an agreement. We come to understand what's most important, and then we work together to find a way to fund it, right? It's collaboration. I mean, the pandemic changed everything, and we have to make sure that, when those kids get back to school and they get back to normalcy, school has what they need, the town has what they need, and it's not contentious anymore. I mean, yeah, there's always some strong dialogue you have when you're negotiating, like what people can provide from the town. The town can only raise the taxes 2.5% a year, right? And that's what we have. Those are the bounds that we have to work within. But we got to work together. There's no more showing up at town meeting and taking, and having to redo the budget. It's been a collaborative effort, and that's what we need to keep doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Marcy. Mr. Sullivan, speak about the education, what you know about the challenges of meeting the regional school district and the vocational school, regional school annual assessment, and your philosophy and approach to finding balance among that municipal and educational interest.
It was interesting before listening to the candidates for school committee discussing the per pupil expenditure. It's well known that we are at the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to that. A lot of it is financial constraints. We don't have a lot of extra money. We've always met our obligation for the schools plus. The way the budget works, anybody comes in, they call it the wish budget. This is what we really, really want. Well, it gets a little outraged, people get worked up, it comes down, comes down, comes down. We have never not funded the schools for what they've ultimately asked for, including this year. When they came to us at the last meeting, I was remote, I dialed in. They wanted the town of Dudley to reimburse the $175,000 they took out of their reserves last year to help meet their obligations. So what that meant is we had to take $175,000 out of our reserve in order to make them whole. So the total percent, I believe, was 4.8% that they got over last year's budget. What does that mean in the short term? It means that our stabilization fund took almost a 50% hit. And yes, it's collaborative, and yes, we all want to get to the same place. We have Charlton factor into the mix. But as a selectman, I've never settled for anything but what we could afford to give them. 10%, can never do it. 2.5%, we've always done it. 4.8 this year, we've always done it. As I said earlier, my 4 children all went to Shepherd Hill. I had a wonderful experience. All 4 of them were involved in student government. All 4 of them went off to college. I have 1 that's in college. The 3 that have graduated are all successful, have a career, and sometimes it's luck, but I like to think that my children overachieve and they do a great job. One quick one, there was talk about carbon emissions, and I got some stuff I had done real quick. Carbon emissions, we lowered it through a partnership through the town with the Green Communities Grant and accepted Dudley Schools into a solar agreement with Amoresco, which was a project that fell by the wayside, and Mr. Ruda picked up the ball and we were able to continue it. When Amoresco is complete, the town and the schools in Dudley will be 95% clean electric solar. Happened under our watch on the Board of Selectmen. If I was chairman, John might have been. Sometimes it's lucky, you're the chairman, but that's something we should be proud of because the town generated that to be able to bring the schools in. So that was a little bit about the carbon footprint that came up earlier.
Thank you very much. Transitioning over to experience, obviously you both have extensive experience here in town. You did sum it up pretty well in your introduction, but I would like to dive a little bit deeper. Mr. Sullivan, if you could detail a little bit of your government experience in this response. More interested in learning about leadership and management experience that you believe you bring to the table to be the right candidate for this job.
Like I stated earlier, I got involved in the beginning because I didn't like what I was seeing going on. My management style, I don't want to say I'm hands-off because I'm not. I'm involved. I stop at the fire station. I used to stop after the Monday night meetings, go see the police department. I go stop down the highway department. If you don't participate, you don't know what's going on. Maybe my role, because I work for the post office, was good because people could stop me and say, hey, I got a question, help people. But I truly believe, let the professionals do their job. I listened to the treasurer collector tonight, and yeah, I deal with it on a daily or weekly basis. And the stuff they were talking about that I have to go, wait a minute, what was that? I truly believe we put the right people in the right place. I was on the fire chief subcommittee when we interviewed myself and Mr. Joseph, two of our longest serving members, when we came up with Chief Kochanowski. You know, there was some hemming and hawing from some people in town about, well, he doesn't live in town and, you know, this and that. Well, and I'm not trying to pat him on the back. The chief's gotten us close to $2 million in grants, and people say, anybody get those grants? Well, I challenge you to find someone that has, find a town. Chief Wayne's department, they're always looking for grants. They both give us reports where they detail the grants that they found. I think letting your professionals do their job is the best way to be. I'm not afraid, like I said, to make a suggestion or call them and ask them a question, but as I said earlier, I'm not gonna be the one that stands up there and says, no, you're not doing it that way, do it this way. We have an administrator for that. They're strong chiefs, but we made it clear, you report to the administrator on a day-to-day basis. When I was working, sounds funny saying, I didn't have time all the time to answer the phone because there was a problem. No, you're adults, you're professionals, you do your job, you do it well, and things get done. And I think that's what we've done, especially this board since I've been on it. John's been a hand-in-hand partner with a lot of this stuff too. I mean, we just let the people do their job and the results speak for themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Marcy, your management and leadership style, experience, and why you feel it benefits you in this role.
Thank you, Chris. I've been a leader in several businesses for 15 years at the senior director or vice president level and above. And I've learned that you'd have to delegate, you need to hire the right people, which we certainly have in Dudley, and you need to trust your team to get things done. You set goals and objectives for them, and you check in with them all the time. We get great reports from the department heads through the town administrator. I feel informed, up to date. If I needed to ask us a question, I mean, it's not like we have barriers to speaking. If I want to talk to Steve or Dean or Jeff or anybody, I'll ask them, hey, especially if a resident asks, some of those are the best calls, when somebody asks, hey, I have a tree down, or my neighbor's dog is barking too loud, I can call and say, hey, check that out, right? But typically, you let your team do their job, follow their goals, and run it like a business, and you'll be able to see the results at the end. You have the objectives and your key results, and we look at that. We're pivoting more to that model over time. When we rate the town administrator and some of the other department heads, just to make sure that we're always pushing forward on the goals, the things we set out to do the prior year. So I like to see updates on how people are progressing on those goals. But like I said, I'm like Steven said, I'm not hands off, but I like to understand. I'm a hands-on guy. I want to make sure I understand the issue. I want to understand their jobs, so I can actually speak intelligently of it. If I had anything that I've dealt with in my business that could make things better. But bottom line is, let your team do their jobs.
Excellent. Appreciate the response on the leadership management style and certainly your approach and philosophy. Shifting to cost of living, we've heard, Dudley's got a very reasonable tax rate. What's your position on local taxes, Mr. Marcy? And comparing Dudley to other towns in southern Worcester County, how does Dudley stack up? And what information could you use to back that statement?
Taxes, oh boy. Like we said with this, not everybody's favorite topic, but Dudley's a great value, right? If anybody hasn't figured that out yet, we have the lowest tax rate in southern Worcester County, at least the towns around us, and we are still able to be a full-service town with a full-time fire department, full-time police department, highway, and so forth. And I believe that in order to do that, you have to make sure taxes are fair. Nobody likes tax increases, but you have to, the Dudley voters are very smart. Whenever we've said we need a new ladder truck or we need a new cruisers under a debt exclusion or something along those lines, we would say to them, here's what it is, here are the benefits, here's what it means to you, and they would make the decision whether that's something we could do, especially for capital projects on things like that. But we are an attractive town for people, not just moving in, for all the reasons we talked about, the schools and such, but our tax rate drives it. If you ever looked at a real estate ad in the paper, one of the first things they always say is, low tax Dudley, right? And I'm proud that we've been able to deliver the services, doing more with less, like we always say, and keep the tax rate the where it is. So that's one of the things I'm the most proud of doing, that we can say that we've increased everybody's quality of life by keeping the tax rate low. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Sullivan, what's your position on local taxes? And comparing to Southern Worcester County, how does Dudley stack up in your eyes? And what information can you do to provide to back that up?
Well, obviously, you look at the tax rate. It is clearly one of the lowest around here, and it's in the bottom, I forget the numbers, I haven't seen it lately, definitely in the bottom 30% of the state. And again, here we go with, like, if people do their job. People come to the selectmen and say, keep my taxes low. The taxes are set through the Board of Assessors, through the DOR, through a formula which the treasurer collector candidates could probably speak on better than I can. Selectmen, we can't just say we'll raise it $1, $1,000, we can fund everything. The state and ultimately tells you what you can do and how you raise your revenue. And then you're stuck with the pie. You have to figure out how you can divide the pie up and pay all your bills. So lower the taxes, the better. And the treasurer collector had spoken tonight about having a $400,000 plus surplus, for want of a better word, soon. That'll be under the levy, which we could use without the tax rate going up. But that exclusions things that are coming off the book. And as Mr. Marcy stated, and it came up last night, Board of Selectmen just can't pass a debt exclusion. Can't just pass an override. It goes before the people at town meeting and it goes to a ballot. All we can do as selectmen, we allow the assessor to come in every year. She does her annual assessment, telling her how the property in town is, how it valued out, how it's increased or decreased, always increases, as we know. And then the tax rate gets set and they come back and say, okay, we got the DOR. We announce it. So it looks like we have control, and we really don't. All we can do is take the information, as I stated before, with the chief, with his cruisers, as John stated, the ladder truck, the fire department. A couple of years ago, we bought a dump truck because Chapter 90 gave us money, and if the town matched it, we get 2 dump trucks for the price of 1. Anybody want to slice it? Buy 1, get 1 free, half off 2. We did it. That's what I do. That's what I meant before when I said, let the professionals work with what we have to work. They come to us, we tell them, yes, it's a plan we can go forward with, or no, it's not. That's the best bang for the buck is Dudley, as John just said.
Thank you both very much in talking about a topic that no one loves. Infrastructure. I think I'm gonna take this down a more specific road. There was a question that was asked last night at town meeting relative to the infrastructure, and it was during the last article that we were discussing about the water treatment facility, $11.5 million borrow approval. We know that the cost may come in below $11.5 million, but let's just say that the project does cost $11.5 million over the life of the project. Addressing local infrastructure without raising taxes is certainly a challenge. What do you see as payment options to address that investment in the town? Mr. Sullivan.
Well, I was a little disappointed last night because the full-time professional people not all got up and spoke to that very question that came up last night. The town administrator got up, he spoke, other people got up. Obviously, the default position on that, I'm not speaking out of turn, I don't think, would be fall on the rate users. I am a ratepayer, I have town water. If, worst case scenario, if it comes in 11.5 and has to be spread out over, I believe, the 2,200 users, it's not gonna be pretty. If you own a multifamily dwelling, your tenants are gonna suffer. If you have small children at home that like to take baths every night, you're gonna suffer. Again, as selectmen with the water commissioners, we'll have to drive that point home that clean water is obviously paramount. But paying for clean water is a benefit for the town. If you have children in the school, if someday the bubblers ever get turned on, I know you know they're probably turned off. If the children go wash their hands, if they're eating, clean water is a benefit to everyone. It's a benefit to children, teens, people our age, seniors, businesses in town. If you got a reputation for not being able to provide clean water, good luck trying to get a business to either stay or expand. Go along with that, piggybacks is also sewer. We own 17% of the treatment plant in Webster. There's been some things in the paper you read, they have to upgrade the plant. We're gonna have to upgrade our contribution. So your sewer bill could potentially rise. The water department just put in, I think it was a 5-year rate study where I believe the rates are going up 2.5% for 5 years. That's just to pay for what they're doing now. That's not even to pay for whatever the PFAS mitigation is gonna cost. I said it last night and I'll say it publicly. Again, to put it on the rate users would be blatantly unfair. You're gonna start driving people out of town. It's not gonna be the place where people wanna come. People that have, like I said, multifamily dwellings are gonna be paying the price with their tenants. The key is, it's a burden that the whole town is going to need to address. The whole town is gonna have to face head on, and we'll have to make what I hope is an informed, educated decision to fund it through a debt exclusion where it's spread out on all the taxable parcels in town, which I think is something around 6,600 taxable parcels. So if you live off of town water, you're still gonna benefit by having the PFAS issue addressed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Marcy, your thoughts on paying down that project and what opportunities exist, and how you might approach it?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris. And this is also probably one of the topics for leadership. And you know, there's lots of ways that you can skin a cat, like they say. But when you sit in this seat, the Board of Selectmen, when you're the executive of the town, you got to make some tough decisions. And the town meeting voters passed all of those articles, which means all the smart people in this room, in this building, and all the department heads and my colleagues up here will have to put our heads together to find the best way to fund this. The treasurer collector candidates talked about some ways to defray that cost. I know the water sewer chairman talks about some of the ways that we could defray that cost before we even put that to a vote. But the ratepayers that are on water sewer, I don't think that's tenable for that to put it all on them. You will start to drive people away, especially businesses. We have the schools that automatically make the school budget go up, which cause a cyclical event when it comes time to budget. Mr. Spark once said, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one." Right? So this is one of those things for the good of the community. If you're sitting in this chair, you have to say, we have to make sure, number one, we have clean water for our residents, our students, our seniors, our veterans, our businesses. Everybody can feel comfortable that we have that. And I think that when we work to come up with the right numbers, education, transparency, getting the word out there so people know what it means to them, how much this is going to, what their people's share will going to be. But our track record is that we still make Dudley the best value there is. And if it's a debt exclusion, we'll work to pay that down, and it'll come off the books in an appropriate manner while we solve the next problem.
Excellent transition. We're to the conclusion as we're coming into the biggest challenge from your perspective, and Mr. Marcy, this is going to be for you. What is the single biggest challenge from your perspective that Dudley's facing over the next 12 months, and how do you propose to deal with that challenge?
Well, funny you should ask, Chris. I was thinking about that when I saw the topic of biggest challenge, and sometimes there can be more than one. But the number one is, again, the town meeting voters approved all those articles to keep our water clean. We have to find a way to pay for those. And to the reasons I just discussed. Putting our heads together, finding all the ways of funding. Dudley's a leader in getting that. Getting ahead of the game, so we have access to these, zero interest loans and loan forgiveness. We're out in front of that, so it's going to cost us less than Webster, Oxford, Douglas, when they're all going to have to face this too, and we're going to be ahead of the game. So we have to figure out how to do that and spread that across as best we can. And the second one is. It's looming large. We've heard a lot about economic development projects that we've had. We have this, the Stevens Mill. I want to make sure that whatever goes in there is going to be right for the town, its residents, and it's a revenue generator. It still has businesses in there, and there's something in it for the town, not just for the people who are investing in Dudley. as well as some of these other big projects like the DMA project at the mill over here, Fish Road, and some of these others. These community host agreements that we've signed have a lot of money behind them. And we have to make sure that those start to monetize so we can start to fund some of these things that we're talking about tonight, to make sure that we have less, would you call it earlier, Mr. Moderator, mountains and hills. We can sort of smooth those out and do some more long-range planning with the benefits to those. So to some, I think paying for our clean water and PFAS removal, and then making sure our big projects start to monetize on time.
Excellent. Mr. Sullivan, feel free to piggyback if you like, or if you have any additional challenges to share, but what do you see as the single biggest challenge facing the town of Dudley over the next 12 months, and how do you propose to deal with that challenge?
Well, the bottom line, it all comes down to money. All comes down to finances. Everybody wants more, and I don't say that in a mean way. They want more staff, more salary, more money for supplies. On the school side, the schools want more. They want positions they want to fund. They come to us and they say, we need, department heads come, we need. It's all about money. As John just said, we got some big projects. Like I said at the beginning, I want to see them come to fruition. I don't want to be known as the marijuana capital of southern Worcester County, but if DMA can meet the projections that they told us they will, that's going to be a big boon to the town. Fish Road, John talked about, same thing. That's going to be a boon to the town. And all we're doing is taking advantage of a product that's now legal, is what you call high-impact agriculture. It's not a statement on whether you agree with it or you disagree with it. It's like alcohol. Some people don't want to see another package store or a liquor license. Well, we proactively last night, we are going to petition the state for the ability to have more restaurant licenses. We have some interest in town where people want to come. But it all comes down to money and how we manage it. None of us can wave a magic wand and make more money. We try to come up with a plan with our department heads. We bring it to town meetings. Sometimes we have to. It gets defeated. Many years ago, I was on the planning board. We wanted to do the Community Preservation Act, a 3% surcharge on real estate transactions to put money into an account for open space. I was on the planning board. I'm like, who doesn't want open space? We got killed at town meeting. People were under the impression we're going to overtax them. We got killed. Got to get the message out. Got to be educated. But the bottom line is, if you don't have the financial acumen to manage your money, you're going to be in trouble. As John said, it's true. Dudley does more with less. It's been like that. I've been in town 30 years. We're not as affluent as other towns, and part of it is our demographics. 3.4% or 94% residential. If you have one child or two children, there's no way your tax is supporting those children going to school. We have to come up with a better balance, and it all comes down to money.
Excellent. Thank you. That concludes our prepared questions for this evening. Is there anyone in the audience who has questions for our selectmen candidates? Yes.
Good evening. So I just wanted to ask about a few infrastructure points that I have not heard mentioned. So some of the roads, especially in the western portion of Dudley, are in need of some repairs. And obviously some of our school buildings could also use some upgrades, as, for example, like Shepherd Hill, hasn't been renovated much since it was built, and we have dealt with some issues in the buildings. So how would you go about approaching these issues without putting too much of a burden on the residents of this town?
Thank you very much. Sue, the first public question will open with Mr. Sullivan. How do you approach some of those additional infrastructure points that really haven't been discussed this evening?
Well, to speak about roads for a moment, once again, if you follow the selectmen's meetings, I brought it up many times. Under the two superintendents ago, you could have gone down to the highway department, went inside, and in his office, he had a whiteboard like the one in the back, where he listed roads that were done, roads that were in the queue for like this year, and I believe it was almost out 5 years. So you could go in and say, for example, I live on Cardinal. I'm just going to use Cardinal. Oh, is Cardinal Drive going to get resurfaced? Oh, it's up to go in 2025. So there was a coherent plan in place, and still is, as far as I know. And as he stated, some of the roads in different parts of the town do need some repair. And as the year goes on, the highway department stays on top of that as best they can. I mean, they're out there fixing culverts, fixing berms, fixing roads, again, it comes down to money. We only have so much money. We can do emergency repairs, and obviously major repairs, they get done. What was the second one, Colin? About the schools. Here we go. The thing about the schools, they have an elected school committee, reportable to the voters only. They don't report to us. Yes, they can come to the town and say, boy, we had to replace our boiler. Well, we're going to preemptively replace the roof on the building. John and I and the rest of the board, we can't say, no, you're not doing the roof this year. You're going to resurface the parking lot because we think the parking lot's in worse shape. That's a separate entity. They do a pretty good job managing their facilities, their buildings. Every school has a lead custodian. I know that Mr. Matthew was talking one time about how they report to him, and I don't know if they ever got the position. They wanted a facilities manager. So the schools is kind of, they can come and tell us there's an issue, but we can't tell them how to correct that issue, I guess. And that's not trying to pass the buck, that's just a fact.
Thank you very much. Mr. Massey, addressing those other infrastructure points and ideas, how about you might approach?
Sure. Colin, thanks for that question. You know, a lot of people ask us about the roads. We have a lot of private roads in Dudley, that are still working through the system to come approved at some point. But, as far as ones, and the public ones, there's always on a list of rotation, the non-state roads. Some of the Dudley's main roads, the state actually fixes, but the ones that we have, the highway department works very well. We are the highway commissioners, and we work closely with them to figure out which roads are going to be next. And using our Chapter 90 funds very wisely, and choosing the right vendors, and for materials and for the labor that we bring in to get the lowest price possible per road mile to get those fixed. So we got to keep doing that. As for the school, wouldn't it be nice? I know, like Stephen said, that school committee responsible for working on that, but I know our schools apply for the state school building every year, and one of these days we're gonna get it, and then we all got to work together to make sure we have another source of pride, a civic pride. We'll have a new school that'll serve the next generation of students. So I think that's something that adds to the quality of life and everybody's assessment on their house.
Excellent. Thank you both. Additional questions from our audience this evening? Modeling wait time from the classroom. Thank you very much for asking that question. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Sullivan. You have a 3-minute opportunity to summarize your candidacy to the public as we head into the rush towards June 14th.
I have a list of things that have been accomplished since I've been on the board. Some of it when I was chairman. I was chair, vice chair, clerk. I was on planning board. I was chairman, vice chair. As I said before, I was on capital improvement when it first was a bylaw that kind of fallen by the wayside. I was on the first group, and I rotated out. Mr. Fox took it as a selectman. Mr. Marcy's been doing it. There's a bunch of things there, grants that through Mr. Ruta's leadership, and even before Mr. Ruta, community compact for cybersecurity, capital improvement, wage study, green community, energy efficient upgrades. There's a ton of things on here, and I'm not going to take credit for all of them. I'm not going to take credit for most of them. Was I here? Did I help set the policy when I was chairman? Did Mr. Ruta come to me when he got hired, after he was hired, and said, I want to go here? Did I say, yeah, you can do it? Yeah, so I guess, do I get credit for that? Maybe. I think we have a pretty well-functioning board in town right now. I'm not saying there's no room for change. I know people say change is good. I say change is good where it's warranted. I think myself, Mr. Marcy, we take this job very serious. You watch our meetings, sometimes we joke, we go back and forth about things, but when it's time to move the rock up the hill, we're all pushing the rock in the same direction. If you've been to a town meeting or watch a selectmen's meeting, I've lost a ton of 4-1 votes. If I think my position warrants a no or a yes and I lose, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to bend to the wind just because. I don't think I'm afraid to ask tough questions. Matter of fact, when school came before us recently, I went to get signatures after, and people that work at the school said, well, we didn't like some of the stuff you said the other night. And I said, well, then just sign the paper. You don't have to vote for me. I mean, I'm not afraid to ask someone a question and make them a little uncomfortable to get the answer. When I first ran, I said 3 things. Well, 4. I'm not the guy you want balancing your checkbook. That's not my strength. I freely admit that. But I'm not going to steal from you. I'm honest, and I'm going to get you the answer when you ask me a question, whether you like the answer or not. I think I'm a very approachable person. You know, somebody recently said I was bullying, harassing, and called me grumpy. If someone said name 3 words to describe Steve Sullivan, I don't think bully, harassing, and grumpy are going to be the first 3. If they are, I apologize if I offended anybody. Like I said at the beginning, I really didn't think I was going to run 3 more years. I like what I do. I like what I've done. I know I have a lot more to offer. I'm going to have a lot more time. I have a grandson now, which is going to take up some time, but I'm retired, so I can be around more, go to bed. Again, if people choose to send me back, I'll be forever grateful, and as I said earlier, I'll work to get the votes that didn't vote for me. If I don't get elected, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not going to fall off the face of the earth. You're not going to see me crying in the corner. I'll find another committee that needs volunteers, that take it serious, that want to do a good job for the town, and that'll be me. I'll find a better fit for me. I'd appreciate your vote. I appreciate your support, and I'm going to finish like I always do. I'd rather have 1,000 people show up and lose than have one person show up and I win. So please come and vote. It's your chance to exercise your voice. Don't be afraid to do it, and I look forward to seeing everybody at the polls.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Massey, 3 minutes for you.
Thank you, everybody. One of the things I talked about earlier was proven experience matters. I think that you've heard from myself and my colleague Stephen here that we do take this very seriously. We want to be here. We show up. We're there. Not just 10% of being a selectman is what you see on TV. There's a lot of committee meetings and other meetings. So you have to educate yourself on the issue, talk to people, get people's input from the residents, which means being accessible. Sometimes when you're at the grocery store, I always pride myself on being accessible. If people want to reach out to me, absolutely, I return the calls. I make sure that people feel heard. That's the most important thing, because I'm your voice. I want to make sure that you understand that I know that you're heard, and I will bring that forward to my other colleagues. Since we've been on this board, the quality of life in Dudley, in my opinion, has done nothing but go up and to the right, and that's something to be very, very proud of. This board has worked very, very well together. And another thing that, like Stephen said, we do joke around, often about my height. I get it. I can take it. I'm a big boy. Thank you, Stephen. But everybody plays their role, right? Everybody has a role to play on this board, and we work really well together. You don't hear a lot of the things that happen in some other towns where it's a big show and everything. It's like we want to make sure that the business of Dudley goes forward every other Monday, and things are getting done. And I believe that I've earned the trust of many people, and I hope to earn the trust again coming up. And I'll sum up by saying those 3 pillars again: public safety, economic development, and quality of life. Right? Keeping Dudley a very fair tax town where and you can trust me and my fellow board members that we do things for the right reasons. We do the next right thing. I say this all the time, we assume positive intent, and we only want to move Dudley forward in the best way, most cost-effective way possible. We balance our budgets. We don't overspend. We ask the tough questions. We get asked the tough questions. And I'm ready to stand up here for another 3 years for this town that I love so much, and I want to continue to give back for. So please, I humbly ask for your vote on Monday, June 14th. I won't let you down.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
I'm voting for him.
Eloquent
I'm voting for you.
presentation this evening. That will conclude your portion of our candidates night. Thank you very much for your time.
I mean, I'm voting for you.
Yeah,
Well, first, in the interest of time, we will not be hosting anyone else up here this evening. Prior to closing and adjourning candidates night tonight, on behalf of the residents and citizens of Dudley, I want to thank all of the candidates who spoke this evening, shared perspectives, and threw their hat into the ring, as well as those others who are on the ballot who we did not hear from tonight. June 14th is a very important day for our local government, for our town. It is going to afford us the opportunity to provide new life, new elected officials into certain roles. We'll bring back some incumbent officials. But the bottom line is this. The motto at Dudley for the town was changed back in 2012 to all was others, all others will be. It was inscribed on Stephen's linen wall. And when we sit down and we think about that quote, what it really means is that we have a responsibility to acknowledge the past, where we are now, and plan for the future. And that is an example of what all the candidates have done by just entertaining, getting signatures on the nomination forms, coming here tonight and pursuing a spot on the ballot. It is a wonderful opportunity and experience for us, and I encourage all residents of the town of Dudley who are eligible voters to get out on June 14th. Let's go ahead and break a local election record, because this is a significant race. We've got more contested races than I can recall in a number of years, and that tells us that there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of power, and there's a lot of insight into how Dudley can be better. And that, for me, is really key. Thank you all this evening. Thank you to Mr. Ruda and the entire staff for organizing this event, and we look forward to seeing you all on June 14. Be well, everybody.
Great job, Don.